Welcome to Backstage with Becca B with special guest Matt Faucher. Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of Backstage with Becca B. On this episode, after a mock trial in middle school, he was told to audition for his school's musical. Since then, he's had a passion for musical theater. He was part of both the Broadway company and tour company of Beautiful, the Carole King musical, and is currently in the national tour company of Jersey Boys as Nick Massey. Please welcome Matt Faucher. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. So you're in rehearsal process right now for Jersey Boys.
We are. This is our day off before we leave for the road.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Exciting. Speaking of, first rehearsal process for like a national tour since COVID struck. Speaking of that, how has this past 2 years been? Because
Wow, that's such a big question. The pandemic has been good and bad in certain ways. Good for, I would say, my marriage. I think some people came out of this pandemic with their relationships not quite as strong, and I think mine got stronger for it. Obviously, it's been devastating for all the lives lost, and our theatrical community, entertainment community is pretty devastated. And that was been tough. So a lot of people, pivoted and found other jobs to do, and I certainly found other ways of making money while we weren't able to perform. And the hope is that if everybody can comply and get on board, we can get back to life as normal.
Yes. So how did you get through the past 2 years without live entertainment? Because I know you mentioned it helped your marriage. So obviously you got to spend more time at home and being with family members and being so
we got through by sticking together. I also had a few performance opportunities. I sang a few concerts. My wife and I performed together for the first time ever out in Colorado, which was lovely. She's out in Colorado right now doing a Christmas review at the Lake Dillon Theater. But yeah, it was our first time getting to sing together, which was really awesome. And so that was part of it. I mean, we got to do a road trip. We got to see America in sort of a weird way, how you normally wouldn't. And it was that part of it was great. There were a few, like I said, a few performance opportunities. There were some teaching opportunities. I teach acting to all different skill levels, from beginners to seasoned professionals. I worked with the Goodspeed Opera House did some teaching with them. I did some private coaching. Where there's a will, there's a way, and that's the good thing about performers or actors, is we have to be kind of flexible with our lives.
Oh my goodness.
Just sort of goes with the territory.
Yeah, and everyone adjusted, so as best they could to what was going on. Were you one of those optimistic people who was like, okay, it's gonna be back in 2 weeks, everything's gonna be back?
Well, we got out of New York pretty quick when things started shutting down. We weren't sure what the protocols were going to be and how strict things were going to be. So we got out of, we didn't move, but we relocated for a little while down on the Jersey Shore. And that was lovely because there was nobody down there. It was off season, March in Jersey Shore. There's not a lot going on. But we got to huddle down, hunker down there and weather the storm.
Which was, it was difficult. So I want to get into when you knew that you wanted to be a performer.
Sure. I actually was telling somebody in the cast very recently about this because we're all getting to know each other right now because, we've had just some rehearsal together, but we're still getting to know each other socially. I did a mock trial in 7th grade. Ooh. And I was a lawyer. And it was the Boston Massacre, and I was defending the British soldiers in the Boston Massacre. And if you know your history, that it didn't. It's called the Boston Massacre for a reason,
Yeah.
and they killed a bunch of people, and uh, I believe that they were found guilty. I got them off. I got them scot free
Oh,
in this mock trial, so I did well. And then the next year, the person that coordinated asked if I wanted to do like the one where you go against other schools. So I'm in eighth grade. I just started singing because my sister joined chorus, and and she said, Matt, I get an A in chorus. I said, you get an A in chorus? You can't sing at all. Okay, well I can at least try. I can at least pretend and get an A and help my grades. And so I go do this eighth grade mock trial, and I can't be a lawyer this time. I have to be a witness. So I just have a paragraph witness statement that I learned. Uh, and I was kind of disappointed that I wasn't get to be a lawyer because it's more active,
yeah.
and you got to. So I just had to memorize this thing. I'm like, whatever, okay. So I go and do it, but I had just seen the movie Goodfellas, and I had this paragraph to learn, and I just decided in the moment to do it like Joe Pesci. So I did it, and the kids didn't really get what I was doing. Like, why is Matt doing a funny voice? But the adults responded to it. And so one of the guidance counselors that ran it said, Matt, that was really funny. What you're going to do is you're going to try out for the school musical in the spring. I said, I am? She said, yeah. You're going to try out for the musical. It's called The West Side Story. And go home and ask your parents for information about it because, YouTube didn't exist. And I had no way really. I had, you could search on the internet, but you couldn't really find like musical recordings. You'd either have to buy them. That's when Amazon, when you would go to Amazon, you could buy books and music from Amazon. That was basically all it sold back then. And so I went to my dad, and my dad is a big music buff and film buff. He had a huge CD collection at the time. Gives me Barbara Streisand's greatest hits or something like that, and it somewhere was on there. And so I started singing after my voice changed. So my voice changed from between 12 and 13. So I sounded kind of like this when I was
Oh my
13
goodness.
years old. So it was strange, but it was difficult. But so I learned somewhere, tried to sing it in the Barbara Streisand key, didn't go great.
Didn't work.
Uh, but I got cast as Chino in the show, and it was like a big deal because I was an eighth grader that had never been in the shows before. And I just immediately found all of these great people, and it was just a lot of fun. And it wasn't until I I was planning on being a aerospace engineer.
Oh, that's a little
I was
different than
It's a
your.
very different career path. I was planning on going into the Air Force right after high school. So, and this was the plan until my junior year of high school. So I did Death of a Salesman, where I played Willie Loman, and at 16, and I basically just did the Dustin Hoffman movie. Like I just ripped everything that he did, and I just basically tried to redo it. And if you're going to steal from somebody,
It,
steal from somebody that's really good. So it was an approximation of that. And this is what I wrote my college essay about. This father of somebody, or a dad, some guy comes to a sort of cast meet and greet thing after one of our shows, and he's like a big, sort of substantial looking guy, and I see that he's crying, and he comes up to me, he says, "I was Biff, and thank you," meaning that was the same relationship he had with his father, and it was so shocking to me that something that I was just doing that was a lot of fun.
yeah.
And it wasn't my parents, it wasn't my friends, it was a stranger who was clearly moved. And that's more of a testament not to my 16-year-old Willie Loman, but a testament to Arthur Miller, and wrote such an amazing piece. But the fact that it was done by this thing done by kids just having fun, but taken very seriously, moved somebody that profoundly, made me go, maybe I need to rethink this, because this is something. Math, I was always good at math, but it wasn't a lot of fun. Um, and this was just something that people told me that I had an aptitude for, and I always enjoyed. And so that's when I decided, I think I'm gonna pursue this. If this is a taste of what this is like, I want to do this for the rest of my life.
And you're having fun doing it. So like that's the best kind of career path to go into.
Yeah.
Something where it doesn't feel like oh, I have to go in to rehearse. I have to like memorize these lines. You're excited.
Everything becomes a job at some point, especially when you have to do something over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But that's the gig. You don't necessarily know that when you're doing your high school, even college productions. You're usually doing them for a weekend, 2 weekends, maybe 3. But you're not doing a couple hundred shows. That thousands of shows. When I did Beautiful, I did probably I couldn't tell you how many shows I did. So that's a different skill set you learn over time. If you're fortunate enough to get to work on a show long enough, that's a whole other skill set.
I have a question that relates to that coming up later. Sure. in this. But was 8th grade you surprised when you were like, okay, I guess I can kind of hold a tune?
Yeah, I mean, I always loved music. I loved the Rat Pack. My dad was a DJ back in the day, kind of like an amateur DJ. He's a graphic designer and an artist, but he had a bunch of different sort of side hustles. And so he had like a crazy, amazing LP collection and CD collection, tapes, and he was also a big technology guy. So music was always a big part of my life, but wasn't something I necessarily knew I was any good at. And I wouldn't say I was particularly amazing at it when I started, but I just knew I could sing better than my sister, which wasn't. My sister sings a lot of passion, and I appreciate that in her. But but and her daughter now has the same. It gives a lot of oomph. The Fauchers have never had a difficulty producing sound, but it was a long journey getting to a place where I was very confident in singing. But off the jump, I was just happy that they cast me.
You're like, okay, this is cool.
Yeah, cool. Okay, I didn't think that went that well, but all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you remember the first Broadway show you ever saw?
First Broadway show I ever saw. It might have been Urinetown.
Ooh, because most people say Wicked.
Yeah, Wicked didn't exist yet. I saw Phantom of the Opera, but I saw a tour of it, so I probably saw that before I saw that. And we had a really strong community theater near me that I never actually got to work at. I never got hired there. But they had really beautiful productions. I saw a show that was Jekyll and Hyde. They did Jekyll and Hyde, and it was my freshman in high school brain just like exploded. I didn't know musicals sounded like that. I didn't, that had a big impression on me. Phantom, listening to the cast album of Phantom a lot. People were super into Rent, and I wasn't into it then. I'm probably into it more now, but I kind of always knew that I was never going to be in Rent.
You're like,
it didn't grab me back then, and just because I couldn't really relate to it, or I couldn't really sing along to anything in it. But Urinetown was a transformative experience because it was such a small production done extremely well. It was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen, and I knew nothing about it when I saw it. So because it was the original Broadway company.
And it's those kinds of shows where you know nothing about it going in, and then you're like, when you leave, you can't stop thinking about it. That's like mind blowing.
And you listen to that album over and over and over again. I never had seen Man of La Mancha, but I had listened to that album a million times. That was one of the other albums I listened to all the time. Yeah, so probably Urinetown was the first time I went to New York and saw a Broadway show. It was right after 9/11, so it was 2001.
Ooh, so
yeah.
Hey, Wicked came along like 2 years later. Speaking of Wicked,
yeah.
So Speaking of, you mentioned community theater, and I
Hmm.
love talking about regional theater and community theater. And you've been a part of a lot of a, a lot of like really well-known regional theater companies. You've
Hmm.
done shows at the Muny and Goodspeed and
Yep.
more. What regional show has been your favorite, and why do you think regional theater is so special?
Well, a p that's sort of a twofold answer to that. The reason I think regional theater is so special is because you're getting the work that you're doing as an actor is not improved by being necessarily on Broadway. Broadway, New York is a place
Yep.
where it's a theater mecca and it's a big tourist area and there's a lot of money involved. But it doesn't necessarily mean the performances are going to be any more spectacular. Sure, they tend to cast some really great people and some really high profile folks do it. I think some of the most amazing heartfelt work I've done has been in the regional theater space. My favorite production I've ever been a part of regionally is I did Oklahoma at the Goodspeed Opera House, where I
Ooh,
played Judd. Um, and as a bass baritone, there's not a ton of modern material, but there's a lot of classics. And I wasn't necessarily the typical choice for Judd. Now having done it, it feels like a no-brainer. But it took a while for people to see me that way. They've always seen me as sort of as a bad guy because of my voice being low and I got big eyebrows. And, I get it. Uh, but the rehearsal process was really long, which is something that's different than necessarily doing a show like a big tour or something like that. You don't necessarily have a ton of time. Or say at the Muny, the Muni's an amazing experience, and it's produced on a level that I don't think happens really anywhere else in the country. Maybe Tuacahn, it's pretty close. Um, where there's live horses and stuff on stage, and they've had an actual helicopter fly over Miss Saigon, like it was a news helicopter, but
absolutely insane.
a helicopter. Yeah, it's insane. But that's an 11-day creative process. You have 11 days to learn to do the show, and you show up knowing, having to know all your stuff, so they run through the music, you do your book work, and then you're on your feet and blocking it and staging it and learning choreography, and you open in 11 days. So
Just like
it's
it's a
it's
whirlwind.
amazing because it's instant theater and you have to make choices quickly, and that's something that's been very helpful in my career as, excuse me, as somebody who could make choices kind of on the fly. Uh, but for that production, we had about a month of rehearsal, and which is such a luxury that you don't always get because it's expensive. Um, because everybody's trying to make some dough off these productions, and they don't always have the luxury of having that rehearsal time. And Jen Thompson, our director, is one of the great directors. One of somebody that really needs their due, their shot at a major production because she works at great theaters around the country and she deserves more notoriety because people that work with her or know of her speak glowingly because they know what an actor's director she is. So yeah, that's why we have such a rapport with that cast and that and Goodspeed. So it's such a small house that you are basically in the audience. You're 8 feet from the whole, from 400 people.
I think it speaks to these regional theaters like Goodspeed and like the bigger scale ones like the Muny, where like they post their seasons online, and
Hmm.
these like all of the Broadway actors, everyone who's done Broadway is like, I want to do these shows.
Yeah.
Because I was noticing that on one of the Muni's posts, I think. Everyone was like, cast, please like cast me in this.
Yeah, they're very lovely. They're lovely people to work with. It's Mike Isaacson is the producing artistic director out there, and he is very loyal. Once you're in that group, they're very loyal about offering you jobs, and if you get in with the directors and the music directors out there, because they want people that they know that they can rely on, because the process is so short. And if you're going to do something that's intense, you'd rather work with your friends that you know are going to do a good job than somebody that you don't know. Or you're going to hire the person that did it on Broadway because you know they know it,
Yeah.
and we can put it up, and it's going to be a high caliber right away.
Oh, yeah, I need to cross going to a Muny show off my bucket list.
You gotta do it. I wouldn't sit too far away. You sit all the way in the back. There's free seats all the way in the back, but it's this big,
Yeah.
that far
It's like
away.
you can't see. You're like, what?
Yeah, it's a spectacle. It's an event. But it's still great. It's still great theater. And it's not just a spectacle. It's a pretty magical place to be. They talk about the Muny magic a lot when you're out there.
Yes, I've heard about that. So you were on the national tour of Beautiful, but on your website it says you were on another tour first.
I
Which tour
was.
was this?
Well, right out of college, I did a children's musical that was privately produced. Now, you're probably young enough to have read the Magic Treehouse books.
Oh my gosh, I was obsessed with those books.
So they weren't a thing when I was a kid, but uh, the woman who wrote those books, Mary Pope Osborne, lives in the same area of Connecticut I live in, or lived in. And her husband wrote a musical called Magic Treehouse Musical with Randy Coates, I believe his last name was. And they hired folks from that community theater I was talking about. That's that beautiful community theater. They hired a bunch of those folks, and then the music director was the piano player at my church. A guy named
Oh,
Dan. He was a lovely guy, and I came to do a voice lesson with him or something, or a sing at church on a break from school, and he goes, Do you want to do a national tour of a musical?" Yeah, that would be amazing. I was like, "Great, well, we'll get you an audition." And I went and auditioned at this theater that I'd never actually worked at. I was supposed to, I actually did get hired by them once to be Tommy Gillis in Music Man, but I hurt my ankle. I separated my ankle. I got like basically like a crazy ankle sprain
yep.
um, that summer playing basketball, so I couldn't do it. So it was the one. I've actually been cast in the Music Man maybe three different times. I've never actually done it
So
because
one
of
day,
different circumstances. One day.
one day.
Um, how did we get on that? What was I talking about?
Magic Tree
Oh, Magic
House.
Treehouse. Yeah. So I auditioned, went out on the road, and I was an acting major in college. I wasn't a music theater major. But I was immediately thrust into being the vocal captain of the show, and had to like warm up all these actors, and we traveled. It was Jim Henson puppets. It was
Oh my
produced on a
goodness.
crazy level. Um, and everyone was talking about it being the pre-Broadway run, and even in all my knowledge of being just out of college, I went, no, that's not a thing. That's not a thing. I'm
You're
sorry,
like,
it's not a thing. But I actually I'm sitting in my old bedroom in my apartment when I first moved to New York, where I met my friend John Cable, who's playing Nick Massey off Broadway right now. We lived in this house
oh,
together, and I met him doing Magic Treehouse.
oh my
So
goodness.
we met doing Magic Treehouse. We moved here, and then I met my wife in this very same apartment in 2011.
What
So,
a small world. So something happened for a reason there.
oh yeah, I'm a big believer in everything happens for a reason, and it all. If I hadn't done that, basically if I hadn't sung in choir in church, I never would have met Dan. I never would have auditioned for that. Never would have done Magic Treehouse. Never would have met John. Never moved here. Would have never met my wife.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that it was Magic Treehouse that you did. That was not what I was expecting when I saw like guess what my first tour was on your
Yeah.
website. It was definitely not what I was expecting, and I didn't know that that was made into a musical ever. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of
It was.
sad I did.
Well, it was. Yeah. So that would have been 2008 into 2009,
Sounds about right.
and they then changed it. It went from this big production, and I think because their mission was to bring theater to young audience and try to basically give away tickets to it because they're so wealthy from the books, and that was their mission, right? But it's just I don't think it was sustainable economically. So then they pared it down to more. I think it was just a two-person. That it was a Jack and Annie did. I think they did sort of more like a book tour type thing. They would do like libraries, and there would be music, but it was scaled down. This was a full-fledged two tractor trailer truck, two tour bus tour.
So it probably became like one of those like kids section at Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I could never put those books down.
Yeah, I know. I mean that she's done very, very, very well, and she's a lovely lady.
They were so good. So I want to get into Beautiful
Sure.
because you were on the Beautiful tour where you covered for 3 different characters.
Technically 4, but I was only good
Okay.
at 3.
Okay. So what is the learning process like when you're trying to memorize lines for that many characters?
Well, um, my process for learning lines, and I use a term when I teach. I say the term learn instead of memorize, because if you memorize something, you're just learning it by rote. If you learn it, you learn why you're saying it. So essentially, if you know why you're saying the words will come if it's written well.
Yeah.
And Beautiful was written very well by Doug McGrath. So my process was, who am I in this track? Let's learn the one track, figure out where I need to be, all the X's and O's on the stage, and then figure out why someone's saying what they're saying to me and why my response makes sense. And once that groundwork's in there, that gives you then the ability to play and to make choices. So it's actually less daunting than it sounds, because when you go on for that stuff, you're in a different set of costumes and you're a different person. Well, I think for my mind, just because it's not the way my mind works, being a true swing on like a big dance show would be really difficult for me. I just can't sort things out. And I know people that they do flashcards, they do like sort of note card things, and they have like a color system. Everybody learns differently, right?
My mind would go crazy.
Yeah, it's doable. I did summer stock in college. I did 2 seasons of it, and you have 3 plays in your head. You rehearse. By the time you're in the middle of the season, you're doing a show and you're rehearsing 2 other ones. You're
Oh,
getting ready to do the next one, and you're in rehearsal for one
no pressure.
while you perform one. And and in college we did Shakespeare in rep. So we had 2. I did the Scottish play where I played the king, and I was also Puck at the same time. So you know, alternating evenings, or I think weekends. I'm not sure how we ran it because it was a long time ago. Yeah, so you know, 2 full Shakespeare roles in your brain. Your brain's pretty flexible. If you learn the why, the rest of it kind of falls into place, I find.
And with a show that's telling a true story, it's especially important to learn the why
Yeah.
because you're portraying a character who is actually a real life person.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, like you're telling the story of a real life person. How do
Yeah.
you make the character your own when you're telling the story of a real life person?
I think it's a little bit of a trap to try to be them. I think you figure out where the 2 people meet up. How much of this character is like you, and I find the more people I play, you tend to play kind of similar people after a while. You know, they said typecast, but it's kind of true. I mean, if you look a certain way, people sort of see you a certain way, and then you end up kind of playing. I end up playing sort of complex and dark characters. That's sort of a
Fun.
theme of my career. Um, So you figure out how close you are to that character, how much of that is, and then you fill in the rest with your imagination. The rest of it is open to your interpretation. And unless there's things that are very specific, either like a dialect or some sort of physicality that you are required to do, or that is just so iconic with them, like when I sang as one of the Righteous Brothers, I was doing a Righteous Brother impression, for lack of a better word. I mean, I wouldn't call myself like a tribute artist where they're trying to basically like be them.
Yeah.
We kind of, you ride that line where it's still within your own voice, but you're leaning your voice towards it.
Towards how they sound.
Yeah.
So you made your Broadway debut too in Beautiful.
Hmm.
When were you told you were going? Were you told you were going to be on Broadway with the show, or did you like re-audition? What was that?
I didn't re-audition, but the thing is it would make sense if you were doing a show and then you're like, oh well, I can do a part that's opening up. They're going to ask me to do it. That's not how it works. You have to basically have like a campaign for yourself and reach out to the producers and reach out through my agents to say, hey, I was leaving the road. So the timing was I was supposed to go do Oliver. I was supposed to go play Bill Sykes at Oliver in Oliver at Goodspeed. So I was leaving the road to go do that, and I was just going to be done because I've been on the road for a long time. And it turned out that, and they had asked me if I wanted to go be a swing in Australia for Beautiful,
Ooh.
but I had already made the commitment to do Oliver, and I'd already been a swing, and it would have been a fun trip, but it wouldn't have been a different, artistic experience. And so I said no, thank you to that. And my wife was disappointed because they were gonna like send her out, and we were gonna have a great time in Brisbane. Um, but so as I was getting ready to leave the tour, I found out that the swing track that I was doing on the road, well, I was Nick at that point. I was the Nick track in Beautiful, the Low Righteous Brother track then, and covered Donnie and Jerry on the road then. But the swing track that I used to do, which is basically all the same coverage, was opening up on Broadway, and so I had to campaign for myself and say, I'd love to move home. I'd love to make my Broadway debut, even though like obviously everyone would want to make their
Yeah.
Broadway debut. And they negotiated, my agents and the producers negotiated, saw that it'd be a good fit, and I found out maybe my last officially I probably found out maybe 2 weeks before I was going to go join the Broadway company.
Wow.
Yeah,
So wait, so 2 weeks before you officially joined, you found out?
before I joined the Broadway company. Yeah,
Oh
that's
my
that's when all negotiations were solidified. I'd already started asking about it once I'd heard about it, so it's probably like a month long campaign until there was, the ink was dry, and
And then
I had probably a month before the Goodspeed production, so I had let them know that I was going to be taking this offer, so they had enough time to recast, and because you never want to be that person
yeah.
that's, but they were so sweet and they were totally understood because this is my Broadway debut.
Yeah, and do you remember the day you made your Broadway debut?
I believe it's August 24th. I think. I think
Ooh,
it's on my website. I don't remember. I think that's when I actually went on for one of the roles. I think when I went on for Nick for the first time.
yes, I saw Nick on your website. You went on for
Yeah,
Nick.
yeah.
So, how do you prepare for that? Do you like it? How do you not get in your head about making your Broadway debut? Because like it's such like a huge deal.
Yeah, I think because I've been doing the show for so long that there was no nerves about doing the show itself. It would just happen to be on a Broadway stage. And the Sondheim, RIP Stephen Sondheim, is such an intimate theater that it's made Beautiful was made to be in that theater. It was designed in that theater. So you had immediate audience feedback, which I love. It's not a big cavernous house. Um, I had the thing that sticks with me the most is somebody told me when you take your curtain call to take a big, deep breath because it's never gonna that moment's never gonna happen again,
It's
and it
once.
goes by really quick. Like you're just worried about plugging yourself into the show and not messing anybody else up, really, because that's your job as a swing is to make sure the show runs well and you're not in anybody's way and you don't get crushed by automation and stuff like that. So it happened quickly, but I think it all the nerves of it were taken away because I was so familiar with the play. Um, but it was still an amazing experience. And my parents came. We went to like Sardi's before, and did the sort of old school. My family has a real old school kind of bend to them.
They're
They're
like,
real
let's make
sweet.
this a really special night.
Yeah, and it was I had a bunch of friends come, and some friends I actually saw it just last night before we head out
Oh.
to the road. So they've always been real sweet.
What's your favorite Carole King song?
Carole King, Natural Woman's pretty amazing. Also just watching. I've worked with every Carole except for Jesse,
Ooh.
um,
So
and
you said
getting to see
Trails.
Abby Mueller sing that song
Oh my
and
God.
with just tears streaming down her face because she's such an amazing actress. Was really, really moving and powerful and impressive. Just you're not even an actor anymore. You become an audience member when somebody's working like that on stage and you're that close to it.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, it's really astounding when you just go, I don't even know how that person's doing that. That is
I
really amazing.
I mean, I saw Six on my last Broadway trip to New York, on my last
Yeah.
trip to New York, and
Oh
it's
yeah,
just,
she's amazing. She lives in this neighborhood.
I was like, oh my, because like before, like everyone's just like cheering and everything. Like Six is like a different vibe of a show. So
Right.
before everyone is like, it's like full on concert, and then she starts singing, and then everyone's just like silent. You can hear a pin drop.
Yeah. Yeah, because not only is she have a amazing instrument, but she is a beautiful actress.
Yeah,
It's astounding the stuff that she does. That
yeah,
whole family is obviously very talented.
amazing. And I can't move on to Jersey Boys before I ask about, speaking of the Stephen Sondheim Theater,
Hmm.
what is your favorite Stephen Sondheim show?
Sweeney Todd,
Ooh.
easy. Sweeney Todd. It's a little one because I did it in high school. Not I was Anthony Hope in high school. There's a VHS tape somewhere out there with I'm wearing a lot of stage makeup and
Yes.
I have like brown lipstick on. It's a lot. I got like the full Ben Nye kit on my face. Um, and I was really disappointed that I wasn't Sweeney Todd then, and it's a part that I want to play. And I think it's just such a thrilling musical, and it's one of the other musicals that spawned my love for it. I mean, West Side Story also. I mean, it's not his, it's his lyrics. Um, that also had a pretty big, profound effect on me as well.
Why do you think his work is gonna be around for ages and ages and like be the talk of musical theater?
Because it's character based. He was an actor before he was a composer. He acted in college. He understands the human condition, and he understands that people are messy, and the music can reflect that, and we can live and grow and understand people in a more complex way through his music. I think that's gonna, much like Rodgers and Hammerstein, won't go away because they were so transformative to the form. I think Sondheim will continue to be played as the new golden era of music theater.
Forever. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
I heard he was working on a new piece, so I hope that gets
yeah,
shown on Broadway eventually, fingers crossed. So, I want to get into Jersey Boys.
cool.
You're in the rehearsal process, as I mentioned right now. What was your audition like for Jersey Boys? And why did you choose to go in to audition for a national tour?
Well, right before the pandemic happened, I was go in for the Jip Nick cover for the off-Broadway company to then cover my friend and former roommate who was the officiant at my wedding, John Cable,
Oh my goodness.
who's playing Nick Massey now. I was going to go cover him because Nate Sherrick, who was a swing on Beautiful as well, was the swing for the Jersey Boys company because he's been with Jersey Boys on and off for a long time. So he had recommended me to Mary Sugarman, who's the casting director, for that production. I had auditioned for Jersey Boys in 2009 when I first moved here for a swing track for maybe like the Vegas production or something like that. But I just was so out of my depth. I made it to, I think, a second round callback, but I was an acting major. I just didn't really know how to sing yet. I didn't, I was still figuring a lot of stuff out. And so I really didn't go back in until I was supposed to go back in March 2020. Pandemic happens literally that Friday when Broadway shut down, or that Thursday. My audition was supposed to be that Friday. Everything shuts down. Okay. Flash forward, things are coming back. We do some TV stuff, some film work, concerts, whatever to get us through. And then auditions are coming up, and we got this is the background I would use to do a self tape. My agent sent me the audition, and it wasn't for any sort of coverage. It was to be Nick, which I was interested in playing the role. If I was going to go on the road and not get to see my wife every day, it had to be something that was interesting and enticing and something that I thought was a good fit. And it sits perfectly in my voice. I look like a Jersey boy. People in my entire career have asked me if I've been in Jersey Boys, and I hadn't. So all those factors went into it, and I saw the schedule was not as bad as I thought it was going to be, because I had the luxury of being on a first national with Beautiful, where the shortest amount of time you're in a place is 1 week. With this tour, sometimes you're in town for a day.
A day, yeah.
You do a one-nighter. So that was something that gave me a little bit of pause, but the part in the shows was too good to. The script is so good, and I was reinvigorated when I had to get reacquainted with it. The script is so easy to learn because it's so well written, and that's sort of where we are at the process right now, is kind of crawling back through the script. But that's why I decided to go in, because it would be a great opportunity, and it worked out.
Ooh. So, how do you prepare to go on a national tour?
Well, today I'm supposed to be packing. I haven't started yet. That's something you have to do. How do you prepare? You figure out. I have the luxury of having been on multiple, so I know what kind of things I need to stay happy and sane and comfortable. Because you're getting bussed around, you travel a lot. You got to figure out how to make your life as comfortable as possible. So that's really important. Figuring out what you need. I'll probably bring this big Afghan that my wife made, that I brought on the Beautiful tour. And it's just nice to have something that someone told me that had toured a bunch, have something that reminds you of home.
Yep.
And so it doesn't matter if I'm in an Airbnb or I'm in a hotel, I have this thing that just reminds me of home. Yeah, and having clothes for a couple different seasons, because you don't know. Sometimes you're jumping around the country and it's vastly different temperatures, and self-care, figuring out how to take care of yourself. Whether you need a humidifier because you're going to be in Vegas for 2 weeks, or and knowing the older you get too, the better you get at taking care of yourself. It's stuff that I would wish the younger generation of artists to learn is to learn how to take care of yourself, because it'll only help you if you have these good habits now, because eventually you're going to need those things just to sustain your instrument.
I think a good testament to taking care of yourself right now on Broadway is Lindsay Pierce, because she had to call out of Wicked for now, like going on maybe 3 months because she got hurt, and like I don't know how, like that was probably so tough, like
Yeah,
pressure
you
on the moms.
you realize that you're a performer, and you say the the show must go on thing is not a healthy way to live. It if you're having like if you're tired, the show must go on. But if there's something wrong,
Yeah,
whether it's personally, physically, professionally, if there's an issue, it needs to be dealt with. And sometimes you need to take a mental health day. Sometimes you need to take care of yourself because it's not going to help the show. You're not going to tell that story any better by being hurt or hurting yourself in the long run. And it's not worth it either because even if you do a show for 2 years, whatever, that show will end at some point, or you won't be doing that at some point. And all those performances are gone.
yep.
And all you have left is some damage, or you have, like why set yourself up for failure in the future?
Yeah, and you're not gonna enjoy yourself if you're hurt and you're in pain, or
No,
while
and
like
singing on swollen chords is awful.
ugh,
It's
no,
terrible.
yeah. Or like singing or like moving around on stage on if your foot is hurt or leg is hurt.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's
You're not helping anybody.
not a
You
gift.
think you're being a team player, but you're not really helping anybody.
No, no, no. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what is how did Beautiful help you with the rehearsal process for this and playing a real life character? What did you learn from?
I kind of like I was saying before, I approach every part as who is this person? If you're playing a person, you could be playing a goat or something, but if you're playing a human being, what makes this person a person? Why do they make the choices they make? And everything else is dressing. Everything else is around it. If we find what makes people basically human, then we can relate to them. And even if they do things that aren't nice, like say you're a Judd or something like that, if you need to believe all the choices you make are right, because that's what all people are. That's how people make choices in their lives. They go, I think this is the right decision, or I know this is the right decision. Whether it is or not is that's up to the world. But you, as that person, it's more of a trap to think, oh, I have to be Nick Massey because Nick Massey was a real guy. What's it? You all you can play is what's in the script, and the information outside of it is helpful in giving you the extras, the icing on the cake. It's not the cake itself. It's the seasoning on the. It's not the meat on the bones. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. So beautiful. I would say beautiful taught me how to get into it. The most important thing that it taught me was how to get into a show that's already running and how to become a part of a machine that's already going and how to seamlessly integrate yourself in that. And I would say the way to do that is to be very prepared. Know all of your anything you can learn ahead of time, learn it. And it's not about memorizing, it's about learning. And if you can learn any of your music, and if you can learn any of your dancing, and you can learn any of your lines ahead of time, it'll make everyone else's job easier. And that's really your job when especially if you're coming into a show that's already a thing, or like a Jersey Boys where everything's very specific and it's been running for 15 years
Yep.
in some form. It's been touring for 15 years. You need to know how to seamlessly plug into that thing and then make that have that human that you've created come to life on stage.
And also, I mean, how long have you all been in rehearsal process now? Again.
We started November 4th.
So, like, you've been in rehearsal process for weeks. How do
Mm-hmm.
you make the show fresh for yourself day after day in rehearsal process?
Well, it sounds like a long time, but you're getting bombarded with so much information that it's fresh just because it's not settled in any, but unless you've been doing it for like it's a mixed bag of people. Some people it's their first time, and some people they've been doing this for a couple of years. So everyone has sort of a different responsibility of keeping it fresh. For me, I don't need to work that hard because My ears are open, my eyes are open, and I'm listening and reacting organically because it's all still kind of new. Down the road, the way you continue to do that is it's the same way if you want to get upset or something in a scene, or you do like a film scene where you have to cry like this. You need to keep yourself ignorant of the circumstances you're about to get yourself in. If you start thinking, this is the scene where I have to cry, this is the scene where I get upset, you're toast. All you're gonna do is try to do a version that you thought was good, that you did. You're like, oh, I did it great yesterday. I'm gonna try to do that. That's a huge trap,
You're like, nope.
and it's not fun. Also, going back to the thing that drew me into this is so much fun because we're just pretending, right? And you still got to hit your marks, and you still got to be in the right place at the right time. But looking someone in the eyes and talking to them as if they're having a real conversation, and you've never had these words come out of your mouth before, is really thrilling, and it's more fun for them too because you're not just a robot on stage saying your line and then walking to your next area. It that's how it's way more fulfilling and not difficult to keep it alive. You get tired. That's probably the only time that you're like, okay, all right, let's do this.
Good
But
show this week.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, from what I've heard from past people on this, it's that like the audience also makes it fun every night, like based on reactions and based on different
Oh
reactions
yeah.
to the audience.
And it's our job to for it to feel brand new. And yeah, you're gonna get a new jolt of energy every time, but you can't rely on them. It's always a compliment to what you're giving them, and we're all on the same page, and that's when you have a great night and a great show, is when that you're using that energy to keep propelling that story forward.
And speaking of that story, why do you think that Jersey Boys has been around for as long as it's been around, and why do you think people are so interested in coming to see the story still? Paige.
Well, it's the music is universally loved, especially of a certain generation. The music of if you were a teenager when that music was really popular, it's the music. It's the soundtrack of your life.
Oh,
Some of the Big Girls Don't Cry is one of the first songs I ever remember hearing ever, just in life. I heard it we were in the line, they were in the drive up teller line to the bank with my mom, and I was just aware of music, and I was a really little kid. It's also so the music draws people in. That's something that everyone can relate to, and it's a blue collar story. It's a story about just regular guys, talented guys, but regular guys from a blue collar neighborhood lifting themselves out of. I think Tommy DeVito says you can either get mobbed up, you can join the army, or you can become a star. Like those were the only career paths when you lived in Belleville, New Jersey in 1964 or whenever. Um, so I think people relate to it because it's not just it's a play with music at the same time. Um, because the script is written so well that it feels cinematic in a way. There's a lot of underscoring. It has a very cinematic feel to it. It's no wonder that they made a film version of it, and then they just made another film version of it with Nick Jonas. And some of our cast members were actually in that. So
ooh, love
it's
that.
it's it's this machine because every element is strong. Like it wouldn't have lasted this long if the script wasn't good or the music wasn't amazing. Um, and it's this living, breathing thing that people can. It's highly relatable. It speaks to a really wide audience. And now I think Beggin, the Italian group, uh, made like it's like blowing up on TikTok now. So it's
Oh
like,
my, that's exciting.
yeah, it's sort of reinvigorating the interest in the show and for something that people are going back to because it's something they love, or like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. Oh, Jersey. Some people know Jersey Boys before they know the Four Seasons is what Jersey Boys is about.
Oh
They'll
my god.
go, oh yeah, I know
A
Jersey Boys
TikTok,
music. Yeah.
TikTok is something.
Yeah, it's
Like
something.
my my dad was telling me a story last night and was like, "Guess where I learned this on TikTok?" I'm like, "Oh my god!"
Dad, you're embarrassing me.
Like, why are you learning things? But hey, TikTok is just like TikTok's wild.
It's wild. It's the
So,
wild west of social media.
oh my god, I mean, and it becomes bigger and bigger. What is your favorite song by Frankie Valli and Four Seasons?
I would say "Cry for Me," written by Bob Gaudio. Um, "Cry for Me" one is just a great song, but also in the show, it's the first time the four of them sing together. And I'm I'm such a harmony nerd. I've always loved a cappella music. I've always loved singing in big choirs, loved singing in church, love it. And that's the first time that the four guys, and it's just the four of them, sing and lock in. And so I personally get to get that feeling, that little goosebumps feeling of, ooh, we're singing together and a chord locks in. And it's a great song. So it serves me in two ways.
And you're probably like, wow, we sound so good together.
It, you know, it they're a good group. They're good guys. It's very well cast.
I mean, everyone's cast, the casting directors for these shows know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
everyone's cast in the role when they're cast in the role for a reason.
Yeah. Like I wouldn't be nearly as appropriate in my track 5 years ago.
Mm,
I have different life experience. I'm a different singer. Everything's different. You keep getting better. You keep getting your skill set changes. Who you are changes. Yeah, I think physically you're a different person every 7 years. I think you're a new group of cells every 7 years.
So, you all are starting in Detroit
Hmm.
soon. You all are starting the tour in Detroit soon. How would you convince people to come and see you all on tour?
Um, we've all been cooped up for a long time. And I don't think there's a better way to celebrate. You got your vaccine, you're masked up, and you want to hit the town. Go see Jersey Boys. Go. It's a guaranteed good time. There's something for everybody. You know, 12 and up is what's recommended because there's some colorful language in it. Um, but from someone who probably if, it is a whole gamut of the hardcore music theater fan to someone who does not care at all about musicals,
Yeah.
both ends of that spectrum are going to have a great time at Jersey Boys.
Yeah, because they're gonna know the music
Yeah,
even if they don't care
and the
about
script and the
music.
script is really funny. You don't need to know a thing about them to relate to it and get hooked by it.
So, I mean, musical theater fans and non-musical theater fans, go see the show. Buy tickets. I'll post the link in the description. If you could make a jukebox musical for any artist who hasn't had a jukebox musical, who would it be?
Ooh, I don't know if this counts, but I would say Sammy Davis Jr. needs one.
Ooh, okay. I haven't heard
Sammy
that
Davis
one.
Jr. is one of the greatest entertainers that has ever lived, and it'd be nigh. There's a lot of really talented folks out there, and it would be hard to cast. But he had a really, really interesting life. He's in the middle of the civil rights era, um, and he didn't write his own songs, but he sang the American Songbook, and he sang a lot of music theater as well. I think it would be a dynamite show. That maybe Jimi Hendrix, that'd be another great one too.
Oh, oh, I know my parents would love that one.
Yeah,
So, what would be your dream role on stage?
I'd love to do Stone in City of Angels. I'd love to
Ooh,
be Sweeney Todd at some
okay.
point. I'd love to be Emile DeBeck at some point. Or some other. Uh, if I could sing it, I can kind of sing it. I'm about 95% of it is Robert in I believe it's Robert in Bridges.
And, and Burgess
Yeah,
Meredith.
the Stephen Pasquale part. I don't remember what the character's name is. But that's a part that I would love to do. But Sweeney Todd's really and Don Quixote as well. I
So
sing a lot. I either sing, very specific genre musical, or I sing Golden Age because I sing legit a lot. So that tends to be the stuff
so
I'm
man,
into. Yeah,
I'm a big let's manifest dream roles.
yeah, yeah.
Why not? So how do you work on self-confidence in this industry?
Self-confidence in this industry is definitely at first a fake it till you make it thing. It's another way of pretending. If you don't know what you're doing, you got to at least pretend like you know what you're doing. And then all of my confidence comes from being very prepared in whatever situation, because that's all you have control over in this business. And knowing what you're good and what you're not good at, and being very realistic about your skill set. Because a lot of people feel like they're banging their head against the wall. They're going to a million auditions, but they're going to auditions that they're not right for, or they don't really have the skills to be that person or that type or whatever. And you'll just drive yourself crazy, and you'll think, oh, maybe I'm no good. Well, that might not be it. You just might be putting your energy in the wrong direction. It's I was self-conscious about singing when I was a freshman in college, so I changed majors to be an acting major, and then I had to do all this back work to get back to a high enough level to compete with other people in music theater. So hang in there too, and things get better over time. I was always somebody that had to learn that everyone's not amazing at everything right away, and it's okay to grow, and you will if you put the time in. But you have to put purposeful time in, not just blind energy isn't going to help you. It's just going to exhaust you, and you're going to be upset.
Yeah.
But yeah, preparation and knowing your skill set is where confidence, at least my confidence, comes from.
And blind energy would just feel like a chore too.
Yeah, yeah, and you'll be exhausted by that and disheartened, and you'll wind up doing something else. That's why everyone says this business is too hard. You need to do other things. Like that's one of the reasons, because you hear no all the time, but you got to realize why it's a no. Did you do a good job in that room? Great. That's all you need to worry about, because
Yeah.
the rest of it isn't up to you. They
What?
want you to be good. They want you to show up and be good at stuff.
Yep. They want to find the missing
Yeah,
puzzle.
you would they want Nick Massey to show up. They want somebody to, because it makes the rest of their day like, well, we got a Nick. Great.
Yeah. Yes.
Hopefully the negotiations go well. Next.
Yes. So
Yeah.
before my last question, I want to ask, where can people follow you on social media?
They can follow me. It's _Fauch, Fauch. That's on Instagram.
And I'll put the link in the description again. And before I wrap up, last question is, you mentioned teaching. So do you have anything that you'd like to promote, whether it's related to theater or not?
Anything I'd like to promote? Well, if you are somebody that is interested in studying with me, you can go on my website, and there's a email portal on there. I respond to everything that comes through there. You could reach out on Instagram, but really, website would be better, just because things get lost on Instagram. Emails, I'll see an email through the website, and happy to work with anyone of any skill set or goals. I do dialect work, and I do acting work. Just learning how to have confidence in the choices that you make is really, I would say, what I am best at.
Super important in this industry.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, I'll put again the links in the description. Thank you so much for joining me on this.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching this episode of Backstage with Becca B. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Becca B Talks TV. Or for more exclusive content from this interview and more, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Backstage with Becca B. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video, or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and give me a 5-star rating. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!